Back here with Feldspar again. So I'm going to address some fun questions. We'll get this fired up. We'll get this going. How does technology help athletes today? Are there any specific tools, apps, pieces of equipment that really help the modern athlete? We hear this all the time. Knowledge is power. Technology has given us the ability to collect more data, take what we learn and apply it to many athletes' training programs. And so the number one piece of technology I would say I see being used are smartphones. Everybody has one, and there are so many apps nowadays where coaches are able to record the athlete, analyze certain movements, angles, stride patterns, stride length, vertical foot placement, the list goes on. So I think that's the number one piece of technology I would say is being utilized today in sport. What are the three main areas where you wish there were more innovation in athletics? Oh, wow. I fear I will not be able to name three. There have actually been so many interesting innovations in the sport. Off the top of my head, the wave light system that's used in long distance events. I've seen that that's been used quite often. I often wonder if there were additional innovations that we can do in some of our field events. Thus far, we've seen laser measurements and the laser takeoff boards in the horizontal jumps. I would love to see if there was something different that we could offer in field events. I think that some of the laser measurements / the laser boards have kind of been a little controversial. Perhaps if we're talking innovations, maybe in apparel, maybe in shoes. Shoes change all the time, but I'm thinking maybe a combination of all of them where it's like the starting blocks, apparel, shoes. I don't know. I'm not the one for this question. How do you think technology like Feldspar could revolutionize your life as a professional athlete? There's just so much that we can learn. I think what Feldspar has done and what they will offer is a base for athletes to truly individualize their training and specifically to their needs. There's more than one way that we can execute things. Having that data at our fingertips has the potential to make a difference in pro athletes' training regimens. I think we've proven over time there's more than one way that you can do something. Having that personalized aspect, I think, will make a big difference. If you could communicate with your younger self as an aspiring professional, what is it that you would tell that person that you wish you had known at the time? Oh, wow. Honestly, in knowing how stubborn I am, I know for a fact that younger me wouldn't take this advice anyway. Maybe I would be willing to answer this question at a later time. I think that's my answer for now. We've seen a very competitive Olympic Games, albeit with a few new world records. What are your thoughts on the Games? Oh, that's a good question. The Games this year felt different, not necessarily in a bad way. I think I felt very in the middle about the Games. Overall, it did seem like another successful Olympic Games across all sports. I have a deeper understanding of how much work a lot of these athletes put into their sports. So what I will say is that I will always have an immense amount of respect for those athletes. It's not easy to make that commitment and have that discipline to your sport and specifically to make the Olympic Games. I don't think a lot of people understand that most athletes that are going to the Games, there's not a whole lot that you get back from the Games. Like a lot of these athletes are, working full time, or they don't really get paid as professional athletes. So from my perspective, I just have an immense amount of respect for those athletes. Following Sydney McLaughlin-Levroni's Olympic dominance, there have been some calls to make the hurdles for women higher. What are your thoughts on this? I love this question. This is such a great question. This question might actually be in the top 5 for the most controversial questions at this time. I actually happen to think that this question might be a lot deeper than we think, meaning that I don't think it's just as simple as just make the hurdles higher. I hear it all the time where people think that you can just raise the hurdles and that's that. If the event is going to evolve, I just think there would be so many aspects that would need to be looked at, and that there's likely a lot more science that goes into just changing an event. At least I would like to think that there's a lot more science that goes into it. I like to think that there is a method to our madness, and that the heights and the distances were methodically analyzed and tested and selected for a reason. If you took a moment to look into the history of hurdling, it has happened before. I believe, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, world, I believe that the 80-meter hurdles came first, and then we did graduate to the 100-meter hurdles. I'm not sure about the 400-meter hurdles. I know that question was specific to Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, but I believe maybe that one started at the 200 at one point. So it is possible. I guess the question then would be, should this happen? I don't know. I have actually ran over 36-inch hurdles. There's one time where, as a joke in practice, I did do a start over 42-inch hurdles. That's a story for another day. I'm not sharing that one right now. But if the hurdles were to go up in height during my time as an athlete, I would continue to compete, but I don't think it's going to happen in my time. Great question. Mental health is a huge part of athletics. There are obviously huge highs, but how do you deal with low points during your career? Your mental health will make or break you in this sport. And I do believe that perspective is everything. I know for myself, I've personally taken more L's than I have W's, but I've learned so much in my journey. I would encourage athletes to talk to a sports psychologist and make a plan, especially if you are injured. If you iron out a plan, you will have a target and just that goal that you're working towards. And I think that would make for a better place to work from rather than to feel down and out about being injured. I know for myself, because I'm a lot more goal-oriented, sitting down and ironing out a plan definitely helps. If it wasn't for hurdling, which other sport would you have liked to have competed in? If it were another event, I would say long jump or discus, which is hilarious. Those are completely opposite from each other. Another sport, I would say volleyball or tennis. Who is your all-time sporting hero? Ooh, that's a great question as well. There's so many athletes that I look up to and that have inspired me. I'm going to pick within the sport of athletics. That for me is Brittany Brown, a sprinter from the US. Shout out to Brittany. She's just amazing. And I was fortunate to meet her at Melrose Games in 2018. That's my pick. We saw breakdancing added to the Olympics. What one crazy sport or skill would you add to a future Olympic Games? Oh boy, it does take a lot of athleticism to execute a lot of those skills in breaking. This one was quite the topic for this year's Olympics, but it does take an immense amount of strength and athleticism to actually execute a lot of those skills. That's all I will say. But truthfully, I tend to be a bit of a seesaw when it comes to sports that seem to have more of a subjective system of scoring athletes. I do love gymnastics and diving, and I do think that the Olympics does a great job of putting together a great team of commentators and officials and experts who are great at articulating what is happening or why X amount of points might have been deducted. It does make it easier for the viewers who may not know anything about that sport to follow along and ID what judges are looking for. But I think I'm going to take a different route with this, and I'm going to say darts or chess. And I think either could be really interesting. Okay, that's it.